The barn was quiet except for the rain tapping against the tin roof, each drop sounding heavier than the last. The smell of hay and damp earth filled the air as she stood near the stall door. Her fingers clenched so tightly around the rough wood that her knuckles burned. Her voice trembled when she spoke, barely louder than a breath. "Please, not there." It wasn't a command. It was a plea shaped by fear, pain, and the hope that someone would finally listen. The rancher hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. He had spent his life believing that hesitation was weakness, that stopping meant losing control. To him, strength had always been about endurance, pushing through storms, broken fences, droughts, and debt. He told himself he was a good man because he worked hard and kept food on the table. In that moment, he convinced himself he knew better than her fear, better than her pain. That single decision would follow him longer than any scar the land had ever given him. She had arrived at the ranch weeks earlier with nothing but a small bag, and a past she never spoke about. The town whispered, but he hadn't asked questions. He had offered work, a room, and what he thought was protection. At first, his kindness felt safe to her. Over time, safety blurred into obligation, and obligation into something she didn't know how to refuse. When she pulled back, when she begged him to stop, it wasn't confusion in her eyes, it was memory. When she finally tore herself away, her tears mixed with the rain as she ran from the barn. The door slammed behind her, the sound cracking through the night like thunder. He stood there alone, the silence suddenly unbearable. The power he thought he wanted tasted bitter now, heavy in his chest. For the first time, the barn felt smaller than him, instead of the other way around. As he walked back toward the house, his hand brushed against his bare finger. The faint mark where a ring once rested was still there. He hadn't worn it in years, but that didn't erase the promise it represented. Somewhere miles away, a woman who had trusted him completely still carried his last name. He told himself that part of his life was over, buried under work and distance. But guilt has a way of digging itself up. That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak of the old house sounded like accusation. Each time he closed his eyes, he heard her whisper again, felt the weight of her words pressing against him. He replayed the moment, searching for a version where he had stopped, where he had listened. There was none. Outside, the rain finally eased, leaving the land washed and silent. Inside, the rancher lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing that some mistakes don't shout when you make them. They whisper and they echo forever. Morning came without mercy. The sky was clear, but the ranch felt heavier than it ever had, as if the land itself remembered what had happened in the night. The rancher stood on the porch with a cold cup of coffee in his hand, watching dust rise at the far end of the drive. When the car finally appeared, slow and deliberate, his chest tightened. He didn't need to see the driver to know who it was. Some truths announce themselves before they arrive. She stepped out of the car with calm that didn't belong to anger. The ring on her finger caught the sunlight, a quiet reminder of promises that had never officially ended. His wife looked at the house, the barn, the wide stretch of land they once dreamed of building a future on, together. Then her eyes settled on him. There was no shock in them, only understanding sharpened by disappointment. Inside the house, the air felt thick. Words came slowly at first. She asked simple questions, the kind that leave no room to hide. Who was the woman? Why had she been here? Why had she left in the night? He tried to speak like a man explaining a misunderstanding, but the truth refused to soften. Each sentence exposed him further, until silence filled the space between them. "She asked you to stop," his wife said quietly, her voice steady but unforgiving. The weight of that single sentence crushed every excuse he had built. He realized then that the worst part wasn't being seen, it was being understood. She saw him clearly, not as the man he claimed to be, but as the man he had chosen to become. A movement outside drew their attention. The woman was packing her things, her hands shaking as she folded clothes she barely owned. She moved like someone who had learned not to expect help, already preparing to disappear. Before he could say a word, his wife stepped past him and went outside. "You don't have to leave like this," she told her gently. There was no blame in her voice, only certainty. What happened to you is not your fault." Those words broke something open. The woman's shoulders collapsed as tears finally came, the kind that follow long-held silence. His wife listened, offered money, phone numbers, a way forward that didn't involve running in the dark. Watching them, the rancher felt smaller than he ever had. The strength he once bragged about looked weak beside her compassion. When the car drove away, dust settled slowly over the road, as if trying to erase the moment. His wife turned back to him, tears now freely falling. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "I came here to face the truth, and now I know what I need to do." By evening, her bags were packed. She didn't ask him to stop her. She didn't need to. As her car disappeared beyond the gate, the ranch fell silent again. This time, the quiet wasn't empty, it was judgment. Alone on the land he thought he owned, the rancher finally understood that some lessons don't come with forgiveness. They come with consequences and they stay.